Chair, we have reached quorum, so you may begin the meeting as soon as you are ready.
Very good. Can you hear me, Hannah?
I can hear you, yes.
Okay, very good. Good afternoon, members of the MAG Transit Committee, and welcome to the March 4th meeting of the committee. This meeting is now called to order. As a reminder, please turn your mics on and clearly state your name before speaking to ensure that members of the audience can hear you. And please mute your mics when not speaking to eliminate any feedback noise. As a reminder, phone attendees will need to press *6 to unmute themselves. The MAG public comment process allows members of the public to comment on items on today's agenda or on items that fall within MAG's jurisdiction. We will now begin the meeting with the roll call of the members. Hannah, if you would.
Thank you, Chair. I will begin the roll, and I will start with Aubrey Perry, representing ADOT. Matt Dudley.
Here.
Thank you. John Willett, representing Buckeye. Jason Crampton.
Here.
Thank you. Jose Macias.
Here.
Thank you. Jeff Graves.
Here.
Thank you. Don Coomer.
Hi, this is Don Coomer.
Thank you. And Nathan Williams.
Here.
Thank you. Christine McMurdy.
Here.
Thank you. Tony Flood.
Here.
Thank you. Reed Kempton.
Here.
Thank you. Jody Sorrell.
Present.
Thank you. William Beloit.
Here.
Thank you. Jesus Sapien.
Here.
Thank you. Nina Arredondo. Ryan McDonald, representing Queen Creek.
Here.
Thank you. Vice Chair Corpella.
Here.
Thank you. Salvatore Lopuma.
Here.
Thank you. Kristen Taylor.
I'm here. Sorry. Kristen Taylor's here.
Thank you. Sam Stevenson.
Here.
Thank you. Gabe Elias.
Here.
Thank you. Carol Ketcherside.
Here.
Thank you. Grant Anderson.
Here.
Thank you. Chair Link.
Here.
Thank you. Are there any members that I may have missed?
This is Nina Arredondo with Pinal County. You might have called me, but
Thank you.
Hi, Hannah. It's John Willett. I couldn't unmute quick enough.
Thank you, John. Okay, Chair, we have quorum. You may proceed.
Okay, thank you, Hannah. Our next item is called to the audience. MAG provides the opportunity for the public to comment on items that fall under MAG's jurisdiction that are not on the agenda or that are on the agenda for discussion and not for action. Members of the public are invited to submit written comments via the MAG website. Any comments received 2 hours prior to the meeting have been shared with the committee members in advance of the meeting for consideration and will be included in the formal meeting minutes. Hannah, do we have, other than what you sent out earlier this morning, do you have any other comments?
Chair Link, I have sent the report with containing the comments out prior to this meeting, and we have not received any additional comments. Thank you.
Very good. Okay, item number 3 is the MAG Transportation Planner. Hannah Quincy will provide the report. Hannah, it's all yours.
Thank you, Chair Link. I will be providing this report on behalf of Ted Brown, MAG Transportation Planning Program Manager. And I will start with the first item. I just want to extend a sincere thank you to Jesus Sapien for his years of dedicated service as chair of our transit committee. We are now transitioning to a new chair and vice chair appointed through December 31st of 2025, with Kevin Link representing the city of Glendale, and ascending to the chair position, we have Ratnakor Pella representing the city of Scottsdale, serving as the new vice chair. So we're very, very enthusiastic about the skills and perspectives you both bring to your new roles. And next, I would like to recognize Mayor Gallego for her selection to serve as a member of the U.S. Department of Transportation's new Transforming Transportation Advisory Committee, which is meant to advise Transportation Secretary Pete Buttigieg on shaping federal approaches to transportation, innovation, and challenges. Mayor Gallego's appointment is a testament to the innovative strides we are making in transportation here in this region, and her involvement in this committee is expected to bring valuable insights from our region's challenges and experiences. Lastly, I want to take the opportunity to congratulate Valley Metro and the City of Phoenix on the successful opening of Northwest Extension Phase 2 Light Rail project. This represents a significant milestone in ongoing efforts to enhance transit and connectivity in our region. The collaboration and hard work that went into this project are commendable, and the benefits to our community will be felt for years to come. Thank you, Chair. That completes my report.
Very good. Thanks, Hannah. Item number 4. The next item is the approval of the consent agenda. Item 4A, the approval of the December 4th, 2023 Transit Committee meeting minutes is on the consent agenda. Does any member of the committee have any questions on this item? Hearing and seeing none. Hannah, have we received any online written comments for the consent agenda?
Chair, the only comments that we have received have been sent out to the committee prior to this meeting. We have not received any additional comments.
Very good.
Thank you.
With that being the case, is there a motion to approve consent item 4A?
Mr. Chair, this is Jesus. I move approval of item 4A.
Anderson, second.
Thank you, gentlemen. We have a motion from Jesus and a second from Mr. Anderson. We will have those participating in the meeting online take part in a voice vote by turning on their cameras and unmuting their audio. We need to see the faces of everyone to participate in the voice vote. This is to speed up the voting process. For those who cannot or do not want to turn on their cameras, staff will conduct a roll call vote. Staff will only call on those virtual participants who did not turn on their camera. Members, please leave your cameras on until after the roll call vote so that staff can count the people's names whose cameras were not on. Can I have a voice vote for those online? Those in favor, please say aye.
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 Aye. Chair votes aye. Those opposed say nay. Very good. Staff, Hannah, can you take roll call of the members participating virtually who did not turn on their camera?
Yes, Chair, I will start with Don Coomer.
Approve.
Thank you. Sam Stevenson,
Approve.
thank you. Gabe Elias,
Approve.
thank you. Carol Ketcherside,
Approve. I thought my camera was on, but approve.
Tony Flood,
Approve.
thank you. Nathan Williams,
Approve.
thank you, Chair. That concludes roll, and we have the motion passing. Thank you.
Very good. Thank you. Item number 5, preventive maintenance formula update. This item will be presented by Steph Stearns, MAG Transportation Analyst. This item is on the agenda for information, discussion, and potential action to recommend approval. Steph, the floor is yours.
Thank you, Chair Link, members of the Transit Committee. I'm pleased to be here to present this item this afternoon. Before we dive in, just wanted to quickly note that this item is interconnected to item 6 on the agenda today. As part of the Transit Programming Guidelines update, we also needed to update the preventive maintenance or the PM formula. And to be transparent and allow for a more robust discussion, we wanted to bring this through as a standalone item since there are some programming impacts with this item. So with that, can I have the next slide, please? Here is some background on preventive maintenance. I won't read this full slide word to word, but the key points are that we have been programming preventive maintenance in the MAG region since 2008. And the primary benefit of preventive maintenance is that it is used to offset the cost of service to member agencies. The PM formula that was last updated in 2011 uses inputs from the National Transit Database. Can I have the next slide, please? Thank you. So I will now walk through the current PM formula, the way it works, and then we'll discuss the proposed updates. So currently 25% of the 5307 apportionment for the Phoenix, Mesa, Scottsdale urban area is allocated to PM in the region. Funds are first distributed between the bus and the rail system based on operating expenses. Tyler, if I could get the next slide. Thank you. So funds are then, like I said, funds are distributed between bus and rail. And based on the most recent NTD data, the bus operating costs represent approximately 85% of operating expenses in the region, while rail represents approximately 15%. Next slide, please. And then if you could just click once more. Thank you. Funds are, so like I mentioned, funds are distributed between bus and rail. Our only rail operator is Valley Metro Rail. So that's easy, taken care of. As far as bus operators go, the way that those funds are then distributed or sub-allocated are based on passenger miles traveled, which are weighted at a 10% factor, and then vehicle revenue miles weighted at a 90% factor. Again, these are the metrics that are reported to the National Transit Database. The previous slide or 2 slides ago did indicate that there's usually a 2-year delay. So for 2023, we use the 2021 NTD data. For 2024, we will likely be using the 2022 data, assuming it is available. And then just shown here on the screen are the bus operators in the MAG region in no particular order, just in alphabetical order to show who is operating some form of bus or demand response system. Next slide, please. So like I mentioned, MAG staff is proposing to update the PM formula to include both large urban areas in the region. For the Phoenix, Mesa, Scottsdale urban area, there is no proposed change. We propose to keep the methodology as is. And it is proposed to mirror the formula for the Phoenix West, Goodyear, Avondale urban area. Since there is no rail service in that area, funds would just be allocated to bus operators only, using the same weighted measures of passenger miles traveled and vehicle revenue miles. And then one click, please, Tyler. Thank you. As a reminder, the PM formula utilizes the data as reported to the National Transit Database. Next slide, please. So Chair Link and members of the committee, this concludes my presentation. I understand that some questions have been received for this item. So at this time, we are only recommending that we bring this forth for information and discussion.
Okay, thank you, Steph. Do any members of the committee have any questions or comments regarding Steph's presentation? Any at all?
I do. Anderson.
Yes, sir. Go ahead, Grant.
Since we're delaying the approval, what are the comments?
Thank you, Chair Link, Mr. Anderson, and members of the committee. We did receive some questions from City of Avondale just asking for more history of the preventive maintenance formula, how we derived the formula to begin with, if it is mirrored on national best practices, if there are enough preventive maintenance costs in the region to justify spending or allocating the 25% of the apportionment to the formula, And I think there was a third question, but I cannot recall off the top of my head. So we plan to bring this through, provide more of a timeline, history, background, really tell the story of preventive maintenance and how we got to where we are.
Thank you.
Any other questions or comments?
Mr. Chair, this is Jesus. I raised my hand. I'll lower it now.
Oh, I'm sorry. Go ahead.
Not a
Jesus.
problem. Not a problem. I know that this crowd can be hard to manage. Believe me, I know. I did it for 2 years.
I'm just trying to see all the screens.
Yep, I hear you. So Steph, one question and one comment. My first question is, I understand Avondale has questions. So for anyone that might have questions, I would offer, are we unique and different enough that it might be difficult to find a best practice for a region comparable to ours, to which we are, kind of coming up with our own formula to divvy these up. And then my second statement, more of a comment, is it fair to say that if these preventive maintenance funds do get allocated elsewhere, then the cost of service would simply just go up, because the main purpose of doing this, my historical recollection, has been to offset the cost of service to cities?
Chair Link, Mr. Sapien, and members of the committee. So yes, or I guess to answer your first question, I don't know if there is a national best practice. I do agree that we are unique. It might be hard to find a region that exactly matches what we do and what our service looks like. Anecdotally, I do know that the Denver COG, Dr. COG, they program the entirety of their 5307 apportionment to preventive maintenance. It makes grant management a lot easier. And then to your second statement / question is, yes, preventive maintenance does offset the cost of service. So the members that are purchasing service from either City of Phoenix or Valley Metro, this PM kind of comes off of the top. They don't end up paying for it in a way. The federal funds take care of that, since we can't use federal funds for operating assistance. But where we can, with preventive maintenance as an example, we can minimize or offset the cost of the operating expenses. So should that go away or change, the cost of service would ultimately be passed on to the purchaser.
Thank you. Yeah, I just wanted to make sure that my memory was correct in that, because I've been watching other regional meetings, including MAG's recent Transportation Review Committee, and there was some comments made about the increase in cost of service, and it's just like everything else. Absolutely.
Exactly.
I have another
The cost of,
question, Mr. Chair.
the cost of service is going up. So
Yes, sir. Mr. Anderson, go ahead.
Is there any timely nature of this approval that we would be hurting by delaying action?
Chair Link, Mr. Anderson, and members of the committee, at this time, since we do not have a full year's apportionments for fiscal year 2024 for FTA, there is no delay. It's not like the apportionments have been released and something is waiting on this formula. At this point, we are on a continuing resolution at the federal level through the middle of the month. So I would say no, we are not delaying anything at this time.
Well, let's not delay bringing it back. Thank you.
Thank you.
Anybody else? Does anybody else have an issue with moving this to April for a vote, or should we go ahead and vote on it now and take care of it? Open for suggestions.
Hey, Mr. Chairman, just before we do that, just a quick question. I think I know the answer to this, but I just want to make sure I clarify it just so I can relay it to others. But the additional preventive maintenance funds that's being allocated to Avondale, Glendale, Goodyear, that's coming from their region's federal funding apportionment, right? It's not like removing some of the PM funding from the PM funding that the rest of the region has historically used, correct?
Chair Link, Mr. Crampton, and members of the committee, yes, that is absolutely correct. The PM would be allocated to and from each each urban area's apportionment of funding. So we wouldn't be stealing from one or another.
Okay, thanks.
This is Matt from Avondale. So yes, I do have like several questions. I would like for MAG to research those questions and those answers to get back to me before I feel comfortable on the vote.
Okay, very good. Thanks, Matt. Okay, Steph, why don't we table this for now and you guys can do the background on Matt's questions, and then if they're answered and everything, we can bring it back to April for a vote. Would that be okay? Will that work for you, Steph?
Absolutely. That works for me if it works for you, Mr. Chair.
Okay, very good. Any other questions? Last call? Okay. Let's move on to item number 6, regional programming guidelines for federal transit formula funds update. This also will be provided or given by Steph. Steph, go ahead.
All right. Hello, Mr. Link and members of the committee. Pleased to present to you once again today. If we could get the next slide, please. The regional programming guidelines for federal transit formula funds are the regional policy for allocating FTA funds in the MAG region. The guidelines were last updated in 2019, and MAG is proposing a series of technical updates to the guidelines to reflect the changes in the region based on the 2020 census. Note that these proposed updates do not include any Prop 479, which is the extension of Proposition 400, any policy changes associated with that. Next slide, please. Just a quick recap of the 2020 census, what changed and kind of how we got here is we had some updated urban area names, the Phoenix Mesa Scottsdale urban area, and the Phoenix West Goodyear Avondale urban area. They're both a bit of a mouthful, but those are the new names of the existing urban areas we had in the region, and then some updated urban area classifications. So the Phoenix West Goodyear Avondale area, which was previously known as the Avondale Goodyear urbanized area, was a small area. It is now a large population with a population greater than 200,000. The population came in at about, I think it was 419,000, somewhere just north of 400,000. And then we had the Maricopa urban area shown on the map down at the bottom in purple, which is a new area. It did not exist in 2010. This one is categorized as a small urban area with a population greater than 50,000, but less than 200,000. Next slide, please. The proposed updates to the guidelines have been included in the agenda packet for your review. Any additions are shown in red text, while deletions are shown in red strike-through text. In general, there's been cleanup throughout to increase readability, better clarification of existing processes. And the sections that had programming updates were sections 500 and 600. Those are related to the proposed PM formula, which we just discussed in the prior agenda item. Section 800 is adding in the inclusion of the Maricopa urban area, which is new to the region, like I had mentioned. And next slide, please. Chair Link and members of the committee, this concludes my presentation. Like I mentioned, the red line version is included in the packet for your review. If you have not had time to fully read and digest and form questions, that is absolutely okay. Our intent is to introduce the item now. We'll bring it back at a future committee meeting for additional discussion and eventually recommendation of approval. So I would be happy to take questions at this time.
Thank you, Steph. Do any committee members have any questions or comments for Steph?
This is Matt from Avondale.
Go ahead, Matt. Sorry.
Steph, when we're talking about future committee meeting, are we talking next month, few months from now, or what?
Chair Link, Mr. Dudley, and members of the committee, I would defer to what you are comfortable as a committee. We can certainly bring it forth in April for information and discussion. Once again, have more robust discussion. If the committee maybe wanted to wait until May, if you felt like you needed the additional time, we can certainly do that.
Okay, thank you very much, Steph.
Any other questions or comments for Steph?
Mr. Chair, this is Jesus. Can you hear me okay?
Yes, sir. Go ahead.
Okay. Steph, the the previous item we just talked about is a subset of this, is it not? So we would have to approve that item before we approve this item?
Chair Link, Mr. Sapien, and members of the committee. Yes, I think we could also take these through concurrently, but I think in an ideal world, it would be best to have the preventive maintenance item approved, or at least through the transit committee and ahead of the guidelines update.
Okay, thank you.
Any other questions or comments before we move on? Hearing none, and I don't see any hands. Very good. Okay, let's move on to item number 7. Prop 479, implementation overview and roadmap. This will be presented by Patrick Stone, MAG Transportation Improvement Program Supervisor. This item is on the agenda for information and discussion. Patrick, it's all yours.
Thank you, Chair Link, members of the Transit Committee. Let me just get my screen share up and we will move ahead with the presentation. And hopefully everyone can see my screen at this point.
Yes.
Awesome. Thank you so much. I appreciate that. So as Chair noted, this is an implementation overview and roadmap associated with Proposition 479. So again, it's a pleasure to be here to present this item. Before I really get into the presentation, wanted to do a brief investment plan recap. The Regional Strategic Transportation Infrastructure Investment Plan, or RSTIP, was unanimously approved by Regional Council back in June of 2021. Subsequent to that, we have had Senate Bill 1102, which was passed and signed by the governor last summer. MAG took through codifying changes to the investment plan based on 1102, which were approved in September of 2023. And really the emphasis here is that this document serves really as the basis for all of the improvements funded through 479 or the extension of Prop 400. I like to show this map. I think it does a very good job of showing those investments within Prop 479. As you can see, it spans the region, it spans modal categories, and as you can see in the bullet points on the left of the slide, emphasis to the Transit Committee, nearly doubling the funding to expand bus transit, expanding high capacity transit, and funding the federally required ADA paratransit service within the region. So this slide kind of takes the plan and breaks it down by numbers. In previous presentations, we've really emphasized one of the hallmarks of this plan are those investment choices you see in the lower left side. This is really building a plan that's flexible and responsive to the region's needs. It's not programming out 20 years of investments for the region and instead saying, we don't know what the future looks like, so we have opportunities to fund needed improvements across the region as those come up. Also of note, this includes all funding sources, but one thing we like to emphasize, this isn't just the half-cent sales tax. While that does provide over half the funding for the plan, it is inclusive of all those funding sources available to the region. And so I think this slide, as you see the slide develop, this is a critical slide for future slides that you'll see in my presentation. Kind of a timeline of where and why we're at today. So we sit here in March 2024 at the Transit Committee meeting. Later this year, Proposition 479 will be presented to the voters of Maricopa County for their consideration. Moving ahead a year into 2025, December 31st, 2025, the funding associated with the Proposition 400 sales tax expires. And then jumping ahead one day, assuming the successful ballot of 479, we would then start the start of 479 and the half-cent sales tax collections associated with that. So if you think about it, we're essentially sitting 2 years out from the beginning of 479, but as we all know, transportation takes time, and I think we kind of see that as we move forward. And so why are we talking about items before the vote, even in November? And there's really two facets. One are those capital projects, both in the highway, arterial, and transit. These are those major investments. They take a long time to develop. But in addition, there's also transit service considerations that need to be included in these conversations. So first, I'm going to go through the capital project considerations. Maybe not quite as germane to this group, but somewhat, especially as we look at those bigger transit projects. But we do have a project development process. Essentially, the beginning of any project development process is the scoping or DCR, and then any required federal environmental oversight. This then leads into a concurrent process of developing your final design for a project, while also dealing with those needed utility and right-of-way efforts, which ultimately leads to construction. So what we did is we've developed a few slides that kind of show the development process for projects across modal categories, and kind of can show, as we talked about before, we're seeing 2 years out from 479, why it matters now. If you look at this slide, these are freeway projects, so part of the FLCP. Of the projects we've selected, only one of those projects would have actually met the time frame. And what I'm showing on this slide here is there's two facets. One is that scoping phase in the light blue, and then the development phase or the design and right-of-way in the gray. As noted, the bridge replacement on I-17, which was a fairly straightforward project, was the only one that has met a 2-year horizon. All of the other ones, as you can see, go significantly beyond and take an extensive amount of time to develop. So let me go to the next slide. Arterial projects, similar to the freeway, again, showing the 2-year development horizon. Couple more projects successful or close to success. Because one thing with these, as you can see, especially the ones at the top, they're regionally funded, which means member agencies deliver these projects. Those can move much quicker. But as we move further down the list, we move into blended funding, which means it's both regional half-cent sales tax plus federal funds. And ultimately, towards the bottom, these were federally funded arterial projects, which took a significant amount of time to deliver. And then finally, excuse me, just to look quickly at competitively funded projects, these are those ones done through a call for projects process. Smaller projects, all federally funded, and we do actually have a high degree of success here, but again, still, it does take time to develop these projects. Moving on, more germane to the conversation today, talking about transit service considerations. So you look at the map here, the map of transit provided throughout the region, and one thing to note, transit isn't as simple as just flipping a switch. You can't just say, hey, we'd like to expand or improve transit service without a significant amount of preparation work. And so a couple of considerations for the transit service. One, any potential service change feeds into Valley Metro's short-range transit program process. And when you think about what goes into that, it includes a number of factors. Transit often is multi-jurisdictional, crosses jurisdictional boundaries. So you have to think of impacts not just within one jurisdiction, but all the adjoining jurisdictions. And then you have to have the fleet to actually provide that transit service. Equally important, you also have to have drivers. And then finally, is the requirement to meet those the federal ADA process. So kind of reiterate, why are we talking about implementation prior to November of 2024? There's a couple of tenets here. First is we want to ensure funding is used as efficiently as possible within the region. Second, these projects, these investments that we have in the plan are needed. Member agencies said we have a specific need we're trying to address. The quicker we address that need, the quicker those benefits accrue to both the agency and their constituents. Specifically, providing Valley Metro and member agencies sufficient time to identify and implement service changes. And then finally, federal funding allocated to the region, as you're well aware, it's provided on a use-or-lose basis. That funding which we do not use can be taken from the region. So I'll pause real quickly here. Any questions so far on the presentation?
Yeah, Patrick, this is Christine in Goodyear. Has the region, or when was the last time the region lost federal money because it wasn't spent?
Thank you, Chair Link, members of the Transit Committee. Christine, that's actually an excellent question. To my knowledge, I do not believe we have lost funding. I can think where we've had some 11th hour obligations that it came right up to the deadline. But I think that's also a hallmark of our planning and programming process. Both the participation, involvement of member agencies, the dedication of the staff at your agencies, and also the commitment of MAG to not having to happen. But we like to keep it out there front and center, which is the acknowledgement that we could lose funding. So we don't want to ever lose sight of the policies we're developing, the processes we're putting in place, that they really adhere to that and that we aren't inadvertently causing ourselves harm. But no, great question. Appreciate it.
Thank you.
All right, moving on then, talking about program development. So how do we get there? So regional funding management, as I noted earlier, funding available to the region isn't just the half-cent sales tax. It's actually comprised of 5 major categories. You have the half-cent sales tax. We have federal highway funding allocated either through ADOT to the region or directly to the region. We have the region's portion of the Highway User Revenue Fund, or HURF. And then we also have those formula funds provided by FTA. All of those inputs feed into the RSTIP. But then we then use management tools, to take the RSTIP and deliver those investments. And what we do is we do those through management tools. First being the freeway program, which is implemented by ADOT. The Transit Lifecycle Program, as you're all aware, which is implemented both by Valley Metro and member agencies. We have an arterial program implemented by member agencies, and then we have competitive programs, also again implemented by member agencies. But first, I really want to focus on the life cycle programs, and I'll move a little quicker through both the freeway and arterial, spend a little more time in the transit space. But first, we can talk about the freeway life cycle program. Oh, and a pause real quick. One thing to note, which does help, is the number of life cycle programs remain unchanged between 400 and 479. So we've not grown, but we've not lost any of those programs. So first, freeways and the freeway lifecycle program as it exists today under Prop 400. We have, and you'll hear this numerous times, we know what's in the balance of Prop 400 for the FLCP. We have a defined list of projects. We have a defined phasing and sequencing of those projects to deliver those investments. The FLCP includes all funding sources available to the region, like you saw on the previous slide with the RSTIP, both half-cent sales tax funding as well as federal and state funding. And of the 3 life cycles programs, we envision this being the easiest to transition to Prop 479. Twofold. One, we have 40 years of experience in this space. This is the one program that transitioned from Prop 300 to Prop 400, moving from the build out of the regional freeway system to those investments in 400. And another reason why I think we're in good shape here is we've also had efforts involved. These were approved last year at Regional Council to begin final design on 2 investments associated with the Freeway Lifecycle Program for both State Route 30 and State Route 24. So looking at the Freeway Lifecycle Program, looking ahead, I'll go quickly through these. Essentially, we have to look at both revenues and costs and update those to reflect current conditions. These numbers were developed a couple of years ago in development of the RSTIP, so things have changed, as you're all well aware. And ultimately, what we're looking at is developing a specific implementation schedule for those projects that are in phase 1 and phase 2 of the investment plan. MAG and ADOT look to begin those efforts after the completion of the fiscal year 2025 Freeway Lifecycle Program update, tentatively scheduled for May this year. Moving on to the arterial program, again, the ALCP as under Prop 400, similar to the freeway, we have a specific listing of projects and timeframes associated with those to deliver those improvements. Again, it includes 2 funding sources, half-cent sales tax and federal formula funding. And one thing to note, that the ALCP was always intended to be a reimbursement program. However, project development has caught up to regional funding. And I like this slide because I think it does a very nice job of kind of differentiating 400 ALCP from 479 ALCP. Currently, we have both the half-cent sales tax and federal funding, which adds a level of complexity to the ALCP. But moving into the 479 space, you see it is exclusively half-cent sales tax funded. So thinking about the end of Prop 400 ALCP, we do need to do policy development around the end of the Prop 400, including how long we leave funding out there. And should we keep the two ALCP separate between Prop 400 and Prop 479? Looking ahead, similar to the freeway program, we need to develop the policies and procedures associated with Proposition 479. As you saw in the other slides, looking at revenue forecasts and funding amounts to determine what a specific sequencing of projects will be for especially phase one of the ALCP. How do we do this? Really 4 key steps. The intent is to get a work group together of member agencies associated with the ALCP, and then twofold, look at the policies surrounding the end of 400, but also the development of the Prop 479 policies. And then noting that, as with all things, these policies will be brought through the committee process and specifically TPC for consideration. Next, and the bulk of this, moving on to transit. Again, talking about Prop 400 in the TLCP. Similar to the other life cycle programs, we do have a plan in place, and we know those in capital. We know those capital improvements and services that are funded. And I think this goes without saying, we anticipate this will be the largest policy shift between Prop 400 and Prop 479 will be in the transit. And specifically because of this last bullet point, currently Valley Metro is responsible for the management of the TLCP, and they'll take that through the end of Prop 400. However, with Prop 479, management of the transit lifecycle program will transition to MAG. So this is a good high-level overview of the transit program as associated in Prop 479. I'm going to take time, go through each of the categories. If I get to a specific one and you'd like to talk further, we can certainly do that, or we can catch it at the end of these, but there is quite a bit of data here, so please bear with me. So one of the cornerstones of Prop 479 is moving from a plan-based to an operating assistance model to leverage local funding. One thing we really need to do is get a framework established to be ready to go as quickly as possible with that. It is the biggest transition, moving to a performance-based funding model. We have approval of the general parameters, and now we need to operationalize it. As noted in the RSTIP and in the operating procedures, the base is the region's commitment to fiscal year 25 revenue miles contained in the September 2019 Transit Lifecycle Program. Oh, sorry about that. There it goes. And really noted in the box there, MAG working with Valley Metro is going to begin developing those efforts to identify that framework and what that will look like as we transition to that performance-based model. Next, Express Bus Regional Transit Facilities. One of the needs here is going to be updating the commuter bus feasibility study and market analysis, and the results of which will inform a more robust implementation plan developed with Valley Metro and taken forward for consideration as part of the update process of the Transit Lifecycle Program. Also, planning efforts for regional park and ride lots will be included as part of that study. ADA, as noted, the region funds the federally acquired ADA service. This is an area where cost escalations can be significant. The region funds 100%, but Valley Metro, working with MAG, will be looking at establishing those regional policies associated with ADA funding, those parameters, and as noted, really the cost containment strategies that align with the RSTIP. Regional services, these are items that are going to continue on in 479. Really, the emphasis here is to document those items and how they exist in time and space. Move over to bus capital, specifically bus purchases. The region funds 100%, so we would like to review the models and assumptions associated with bus purchases, working with Valley Metro and City of Phoenix to document those needs and developing a more robust forecasting model for the future, excuse me. Bus transit asset management, again, a collaborative effort between the partners to document those asset management needs and funding over the life of the program, items like updating the fare box system and operations and maintenance facilities. Preventative maintenance, as noted in the agenda item 5 with that discussion, the RSTIP does continue the Prop 400 era policy to allocate 25% of the region's 5307 funding to PM. Oh, hold on. There it goes. Finally, high capacity transit, lots of work to be done here, which are, again, this is another collaborative effort with Valley Metro member agencies. The intent here is, future activities look at, we need to develop the transit lifecycle policy, high capacity transit policies, along with every other one that you've heard in this presentation. It really partially involves updating revenue forecasts, funding amounts, and then again, developing that implementation schedule for the program. The path to get there is working with another working group to start developing policy frameworks and getting that underway. I'll pause here. Questions or comments from the committee?
Does anybody have any questions at this point?
Mr. Link, this is Nate with Gilbert. I have a quick question.
Yes, sir. Go ahead.
So I was interested in the creation of the policies. It looked like on a couple of the slides it says, we'll need MAG will work with Valley Metro on creating the policies for, I think it was, operating assistance and for fixed route bus and the whole new performance-based metrics as well as, ADA. And I guess maybe I'm looking for a little more clarity on how that will work. Will member agencies be involved? I did hear you, Patrick, say, we're going to create working groups to help create the policy. I'm just looking to see how and when folks like us would be involved, if we'll be involved, if that's just through MAG and Valley Metro. Just a little more clarity on how policies will be created and so forth.
Chair Link, members of the Transit Committee. Yeah, you hit the nail on the head. That certainly is a hallmark of all of this policy development, not just in the transit space, but I think throughout all of 479. I will beg your patience. I actually do get to that. You're reading my mind. In a couple slides, I'll kind of show some of that roadmap of how we get to that. But yes, certainly the intent is, as we develop that policy framework, to have multiple opportunities so that every agency feels their voice is heard in this conversation. I think as we've been discussing this internally, that's one of the key facets of what we want to do, is to allow every agency every opportunity to have their opinions expressed and their needs heard.
Perfect. Thanks. Sorry for jumping the gun.
No, I always like that. That's like a little teaser then for a future slide.
This is Ratna. I have a question. I didn't know how to put my hand up here. Hi, Patrick. On one of the slides, you said the funding will be transitioning to MAG, or if I understand, something from Valley Metro will be moved over. Could you please elaborate what you envision as Valley Metro's role and what MAG's role is? And, planning and funding go hand in hand. I just want to have clarity on that.
Thank you, Chair, members of the Transit Committee, Ratna. What the slide really spoke to is the development or the management of the actual TLCP itself, that high-level document that will be moving over towards MAG's administrative role with Prop 479. I think the funding policies that you've seen that are inherent and incumbent in 479 and as evidenced by the RSTIP, that was developed collaboratively amongst all of the partners. So essentially what you're looking at is we have a funding plan that says, here's what the RSTIP looks like for the 20 years. Here's the various allocations of funding. Here's how those fundings are going to be distributed. What we're really then looking at is the development of that policy framework to implement those dollars and put them to use.
Okay, thank you. Another question I have is, again, this plan was developed in 2018-19 with, conversation with member agencies. And since COVID, so many things have changed. So how is this plan going to revisit those things so lines on a map can change? So just wanted to gather some input from MAG on it.
Yeah, thank you, Chair, members of the Transit Committee, Ratna. I think you've seen that throughout the entire presentation. I think the first discussion has to be those updates of the revenue and expenditure, revenue and cost assumptions that were baked in. You noted correctly, these were developed, most of them pre-COVID, with different assumptions, different expectations. So that's why in most of the programs, you can even see it here still highlighted on the screen, talking about high capacity transit. It's really going through and updating the revenues, what is available to the region, updating those expectations of what those costs were, and then eventually moving, I think, more into those, and kind of concurrent with that is then the development of the policy framework discussions about what has been included and where those issues might lie. That's why you'll see a lot of the future slides really do talk about there's a significant level of policy development, just kind of a preview, really centered around the fall of this year.
Thank you.
Mm-hmm.
Any other questions?
All right. Being conscious of time, Chair, I'm going to move a little quickly through these next slides. So the next slides. So these are the competitive programs. This is really that funding not allocated through a life cycle program. The big shift here, this slide, what we really want to get to is current Prop 400 competitive programs, 100% federal funded. Prop 479, we move into a blended funding space. Quite a few of those investment categories are sales tax funded or a combination of sales tax and federal. Really what you see is a twofold, and you'll see one on the next slide, but there's been an increased demand for these kinds of programs, but MAG is cognizant of the cost of federalizing projects. We know that based on a recent study, between 20 to 50% costs increase. And the other thing is to allow those member agencies to deliver, as I mentioned way earlier in the slide. These projects are important to your community. We want to find the ways to deliver them faster and cheaper to member agencies. Prop 400, you can kind of see the three investment categories there. And what we really move into in 479 is a quite diverse portfolio, some carryovers from the past, but also a lot of new spaces for member agencies to look at investments. Top of mind being the two arterial programs for rehabilitation and widening, including new roadways, as well as items like emerging technology and increased emphasis on safety in the region. Looking ahead for the implementation of the competitive programs, the emphasis is going to be given to the two fully federally funded. There are two that are fully federally funded, those two arterial competitive programs. We want to get going on those first because we're looking at programming funding beginning as early as fiscal year 2026, as well as 2027 and 2028. How do we do it? It's starting to sound a bit repetitive, but equally valuable. We want to get a work group together, member agencies, to help develop those policies, another opportunity for member agencies to weigh in on what their visions are, what is of interest to their agency. Again, like all those policies will be brought through the process, specifically including TPC for consideration. We're tentatively scheduling the call for projects associated with these two in the fall of this year, so later in calendar year 2024. Continuing on, two things of critical import to developing these competitive programs is an update to our regional active transportation plan, and then as well a development update to the systems management and operations plan. Also critical and kind of a point of emphasis that we will be holding a series of policy discussions on transportation safety this spring. Unfortunately, safety in the region is not one of our highlights, and it's something I think the region is committed to. So we want to look at developing strategies to address that. One of those will be updating the STSP, and also, as you will can think that will factor into numerous of the competitive programs. So a quick summary. How do we get there? So efforts will be initiating soon, partially starting with these conversations today. The near-term efforts are going to be really focusing on the technical side, building those policy frameworks. Couple of items this spring are really looking at what we need to do to wind down the Prop 400 arterial lifecycle program, getting those 2 new competitive programs underway, and then this fall, the 2 big lifts, developing the new policies and procedures for the arterial program, and then specifically developing the policies and procedures for the transit lifecycle program. Regular updates will be provided to technical and policy committees as appropriate. So certainly we will be coming back to the transit committee with updates as we have information to share. And with that, Chair, members of the transit committee, that concludes my presentation. I'm available for any additional questions. Thank you so much.
Thank you for the presentation, Patrick. Do any members have any comments or questions? Okay, hearing none and seeing none. Thanks again, Patrick. We appreciate your time and all the effort putting the presentation together.
No,
okay, let's move on to item number 8, semi-annual status report on the federal grant activity. This item will be presented by Stephanie Rangel, City of Phoenix lead federal grants accountant. This item is on the agenda for information and discussion. Stephanie, take it away.
Good afternoon, Chairman Link and committee members. Please find attached in your documentation of the listing of federal grants that have a balance as of December 31st, 2023. I can share my screen. Hold on just a minute. No. Okay. So it should be part of your transit committee documentation. So if you have any questions,
Stephanie, you should be able to share your screen now.
Okay. Let me bring it over here. So there you go. So if there's any questions, we currently have, I think, probably about 65 active grants. We are continuing to apply for them as we get the federal funding. We are waiting for the full apportionment for federal fiscal year 24's funds, like Steph Stearns mentioned earlier, and we will continue to apply as we get the funding available. Are there any questions?
Does anybody have any questions for Stephanie?
Stephanie, it's Christine. Have we got any updates on local staff for FTA, whether that's moving along, that it might be holding up our grant a little bit?
Chairman Link, Ms. McCurdy, and members of the committee, yes, we are. They are moving the grants along at an exponential time frame as we have requested, and we're combining some the funding types together, which is making it much easier for both city staff and for FTA staff. So yes, we are doing that. Thank you very much.
Thanks, Stephanie. Thanks for all of your help, you and your team. It's been really great to be able to work with you guys. I appreciate it.
Any other questions for Stephanie?
Chair Link and members of the committee, I just wanted to note that the grant status report is available in your agenda packet that was sent out.
Okay, yeah, and everybody wants to take a look at it, and I'm sure if you have any questions, Stephanie would be happy to help you out and answer your questions. Okay, thanks, Stephanie. Appreciate the update.
Thank you.
Okay, item 9, member agency updates. Are there any updates or announcements by any committee members that they'd wish to share with the rest of the group? Let's see.
Mr. Chair, this is Jesus.
Jesus, go ahead.
Yeah, I just want to let folks know, piggybacking off of what Stephanie just went through, in case you hadn't heard, the Region 9 FTA staff is moving back to the LA office. They've been in San Francisco for several years, but they've let us know that they are relocating back to the LA office. So I don't think that'll hold up anything because a lot of that can be done virtually. But Stephanie, correct me if I'm wrong. We don't expect any bumps in the road, but they are relocating once again. Many of them were in the LA office years ago. They went up to San Francisco, and they are now moving back to the LA office, FYI. And then in case you didn't hear, the current FTA administrator, Nuria Fernandez, has announced her retirement here, I believe, at the end of this month. So FTA will also be seeking a new head here shortly.
Okay, very good. Thanks for the info. That's not going to change anything as far as regions and the geographic makeup.
No, sir.
Okay. All right. Thanks, Jesus. Anybody else? Okay, item 10, request for future agenda items. Are there any requests by any committee members for a future agenda item to be placed? Hearing and seeing none. Don't think. Okay, very good. As a reminder, the next meeting will be on Monday, April 1st at 1 p.m. via teleconference. With no further business, this meeting of the MAG Transit Committee is now adjourned at 2:01. Thank you very much, everybody, for attending. I appreciate it. Have a good week.